Hey guys, I'm Tasha.
Hey listeners, this is Guni.
And you're tuned in to Integrative the podcast, where we chat and explore all things on integrative medicine. Today we have Dr. Gaya. She's a medical doctor and public health expert with nearly 2 decades of experience in the public health sector. She has been working under the World Health Organization for about 20 years, where she spent much of her time leading capacity building initiatives and programs. She currently leads all learning, training, and capacity building for WHO's Health Emergencies Program and is responsible for COVID-19 trainings, amongst others. So welcome, Dr. Gaya, to Dotif, the podcast. We are so pleased to have you with us.
Welcome.
Thank you, Tasha. It's a pleasure to be here.
How have you been? How has the pandemic been treating you?
Well, I'm very lucky. I live in a country where, we have access to healthcare, to vaccines. I've been working, except for the first 6 weeks, I've been coming to work every day. So we are very lucky, but it's been a tough time for everybody. And of course, our job is to try and keep people safe from emergencies. And not just the physical safety, but also their mental safety, their psychosocial safety, whether it's in a pandemic or in everyday life. And I think that that's really the first lesson we have to learn, that everything has to be done together. If you miss one or two important bits, it doesn't matter if you have a vaccine. You may not have serious illness because you're vaccinated, but you could still be putting others in danger. So I think this holistic approach, this integrated approach to anything that's related to health is really important. And it's especially important during a pandemic.
Yeah. 100%. Just to backtrack a little bit, I know I mentioned in your bio that, you're a medical doctor. So I guess for our audience, it'd be good to know, what pushed you to become a medical doctor in the first place and what your background is.
Well, I grew up in Sri Lanka. I'm Sri Lankan still by nationality. And I grew up in Sri Lanka in the early 70s, where it was really difficult. There was an internal conflict going on. There were lots of economic issues. And from a very young age, I think by the age of 5, we were influenced by our environment, our parents, wishing us to use education as a way to develop oneself and one's family, but also picking something that would really help the world, help your country, your family, humanity. So there's that value-based ambition was very strongly. It was a big exposure for me, particularly from my mother. And my family migrated to England. I grew up in London from about the age of 6 till about 16. But that foundation of sort of value-based, what I call value-based ambition, you're very ambitious for yourself and you have to work very hard to become a doctor. That the whole academic requirement is very hard. But I think I was always driven by this need to serve. So it seemed that I would become a doctor, and in a very convoluted way I did. I went back to Sri Lanka. When I went back in the early 80s, there was a full-blown war again. I don't know whether war follows me or I follow war.
No way.
No, it's I think some of us, I don't know. And it was a tragic time. And it was the beginning of a decade, couple of, nearly 30 years of internal conflict in Sri Lanka. And at that time, universities were closed. It was a tough time where we were also really trying to understand, settle back into that kind of culture, but really not agreeing with the politics of what was going on. And I was so frustrated when I did my A-levels. I was 18. I went and became a journalist.
Wow.
So I got trained, and it was perhaps the most exciting 3 years of my life, I must say. I learned so much. But then, I realized I really did not just want to write the news. I wanted to make the news. And because the universities were closed, it was very difficult. I applied for a competitive scholarship, and China was offering scholarships, but we had like 5,000 students who applied for 5. Luckily, I got into that. And so the whole of my medical education was free. One catch, you had to go to China and learn Chinese before you could go to university, which I did. And I think when you're young and you really want to do something, you can do it. After I graduated, I was given another scholarship to do a year's study in internal medicine, cardiovascular medicine. And I came back to Sri Lanka, sort of really shiny-eyed, wanting to serve. And I did. I worked for a few years in the southern part of Sri Lanka as a young doctor, and life was very tough. We worked an average of 105 hours a week.
Wow.
And
That's
by
insane.
by the time you graduate, I was 29, 30. And of course, it was time to get married, have a family. And I had 2 children, within 1 calendar year.
Wait,
it was tough.
hold on. You had 2 kids in
Fantastic.
1 year?
I didn't plan it, but I had a baby. I had a daughter, and I was told because of the medical complications, I would never conceive again, and I should look after this baby. But within 3 months, I conceived again. So I always tell my
Wow.
children, they were not planned, but they're loved,
Yeah.
and it was tough. But then my next appointment was into the conflict zones in Sri Lanka, where I couldn't take my children, and my son was only 6 weeks old. And my
God.
daughter was 1 year and 6 weeks old. So I had to take a really difficult decision and leave the clinical, the government system of being a doctor. And I set up, my husband and I, we set up a private practice, you're a qualified doctor, there's a need. But really it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
It
Right.
broke my heart that I would charge poor people money for health. I just couldn't do it. So after about 6 months, I set it up as an enterprise, and my ex-husband, he continued to do it, but I just couldn't, my heart just couldn't deal with it. And then luckily I found I found a job as a junior lecturer in one of the medical colleges in Sri Lanka, in Colombo. And that's where I discovered public health, and it was an accident. It was really an accident. And I realized I really like this because public health is very different from medicine. Medicine is often about curative services, about treatment, but public health looks at people in their environment, in the social, economic, cultural context that influence their health. And I really, really liked it. And from there, I think it just blossomed. I was headhunted, and I was appointed as Director of Community Health for Sri Lanka's largest NGO. And they worked in 15,000 villages. And, I was in the conflict zone. I was in villages trying to figure out health, not medicine, how to prevent diseases, how to promote health. And that was my university, really. And then after that, I was headhunted again for Save the Children UK, Red Barna. And then it was a very difficult time because I actually was a big advocate for children's rights on both sides of the conflict. And of course, some people, some extreme parts of Sri Lankan society decided that I was a traitor because I was speaking up for children on both sides of the conflict, both Sinhalese, Tamil and Muslim children. Of course, when you're young, you don't really care. You think when people challenge you, this is an invitation to do more, right? Yeah. But what really happened and where I really changed my mind was when they actually threw a grenade in my office and threatened to kidnap my children. So then I thought, this is really now affecting my family. I can't do this anymore. This is just too much. I need to now protect my children. So I looked for a job abroad, and I was very lucky to find a job as a training officer at the World Health Organization. And that was 20 years ago, and that's how I came here.
So for the listeners that don't know, is that I know Dr. Gaya since a very young age. And this particular story, I was not aware. And I am in shock and in awe of what she just told us. Because I mean, how do you even deal with this type of events in your life when your family is threatened at that level, but you're kind of torn in between doing what's right and what you think is of value, and you want to protect those children as well, but you have to protect your family as well?
Yeah, but I think you have to find a way, and you have to do both. So I just realized I couldn't do it from there because I couldn't ensure their safety. And it was a very violent time. But I think it's about being pragmatic and also appreciating that millions of people around the world, each person has their own story. They suffer, but for me, I was from a culture where you had to face challenges and you had to figure out a way. And I really didn't feel sorry for myself. I was extremely heartbroken because when I first came here, because of my nationality, I wasn't allowed to bring my children. They were 4 and 5 years old. And for a mother to leave her children, and my husband at the time, he was the most generous person because he said, your career is going to go further than mine. So I want you to go and I will take care of the children. And so, that kind of family, but also that kind of risk taking. And it took me 6-7 months to bring them over. I came to work, I cried every single day, and we didn't have internet and WhatsApp and Skype and Zoom, It was tragic. And for months, my daughter wouldn't talk to me because she felt I abandoned her, So it was this crazy thing. But I think I was trained in war, right? So I knew people suffered. on a completely different scale, and I couldn't be self-indulgent about myself. But luckily things worked out. I was able to bring them over, and my kids are grown up now, 25, 26, and yes, the scars of that persist. But life is a balance of what you do for yourself and for other people.
I'm just in awe.
No, Tasha, I don't think it's anything like that. I think, it's a context in which you're brought up. I realized me becoming a doctor was also meant that I'm responsible for my family, because we lived in a very difficult situation. So you have responsibility not just for yourself. So you don't actually think I'm strong or resilient. You think, what the hell am I going to do now? Yeah. Right? How am I going to protect the family? Please?
Yeah.
You ask any mother in the most impoverished village in the world. If you want to find the fiercest animal on the planet, you go look a mother in the eye. Because that's your job. That's your biological, psychological, emotional job, is to protect. But the issue is we find it difficult to take decisions for the future while sacrificing for the present. And my generation did that. We could sacrifice for the present in order to have something better for everybody in the future. Maybe we were wrong, and maybe we've scarred our children. I don't know. I mean, there's no right way. But I'm being very honest with you. I had no awareness that I was being brave or resilient. I just did what I had to do. I put one foot in front of the other. I was afraid because I didn't know what would happen. But I think if you look at your parents, it's the same. They've taken so many decisions that people today would consider very courageous, but this is normal. This is life.
I mean, I guess in needing to survive, you do what it takes. And then I guess you reflect about your decisions after.
It's also a lesson that we mustn't judge people. The world, what people present to the world, you cannot understand their story, their backstory. So when you understand that, you have great respect and compassion for other people. And their suffering is very real to them.
Exactly. And I think that that's a bit of a celebration. I would like to point out is how it takes a village, right? Even to get this going, be it with the children and having your ex-husband helping, supporting you. Then I guess your mother as well, supporting you at that. It takes a village to make this happen. You're very humble about it, but I think not everyone has to face this type of adversity. But I wanted to kind of touch base on the WHO and your current work. What is it about your current job that you're passionate about, and because you've been working close to 2 decades with them? What is it about it that kind of helps you wake up every day and just keep going?
The mission of this organization, really, health for all. This really resonates in my heart. When I was becoming a doctor or studying, I didn't know this, right? But I didn't know there was an organization that was created just to create health for all. So, when I discovered it, there was no way. I mean, I was giving it up. The fact that we are always working for public good and for health and not being pushed by or driven by market forces or economic gain, that aligns with my values, and it really is a source of pride and joy for me. Also, it's working for 195 governments, right? It isn't just working, it's political, because health is political, but it isn't working for a government with a political view. And I'm a very independent thinker. I'm a disruptor. I'm anti-establishment. So being a journalist taught me to be anti-establishment. Don't accept the status quo. Understand that anybody in power doesn't want to give it up. So that gives me that activist advocate personality while I was still forming. And the third thing is, it's a place where you work with people from around the world, and you can work at different levels. So one day I'm in the front line helping, train people in the very remote areas of Congo during an Ebola outbreak. The next day I am training ministers of health, So this big spectrum of work, and the mission of this organization and the freedom we have had to grow and really take decisions and shape health. It's just amazing. My family they think I'm a workaholic, but that's a wrong term. I'm not a workaholic. I have a mission, and this organization helps me achieve that. I mean, there are days I say I should pay WHO for allowing me to come to work, not pay me for the work.
That's the first I've heard that, but I love it.
Again,
it's honest. I'm being very honest,
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes back to what you said earlier, working as a medical doctor and then having that shift to become a lecturer. And when you started realizing that you were trying to change the concept of health, or rather than medicine itself. And so I guess I'd love to see your take on what you think health is and how you view integrative health.
So it's really been a process of discovery for me, because medicine was the goal, right? But I think I've always been uneasy about things that are framed in negative ways. I don't like this deficiency-based approaches to anything. I like what we now, I know is the term, is asset-based approach. And over the years, over the experience, that I actually really noticed the definition of health by WHO, which was actually agreed in 1948. And the definition is really amazing. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease.
Yeah.
So this holistic nature, and of course, it's very difficult to measure, right? So not just about illness and the absence thereof, but there are these other dimensions of mental and social, right? And what we've understood by mental and social has also evolved over the years. So it took me, I think, about 10 years to really get excited about this. It was a revelation. It was like a discovery in stages. And then it just sat with me to say, yes, that's right. When people are sick, we need medical services, because we know people are dying because of lack of medical services.
Yeah.
But that is a big and important contribution, but it is not enough. I'm trained as a scientist. I really believe in evidence-based work. So over the last few decades, we've seen research coming in about how mental health can be achieved and how mental and physical health are linked. What do we mean by social health? What do we mean by emotional health, by spiritual health? So science itself, and I'm not talking about biomedical, but also the social sciences, psychology, and others, are giving us evidence of first understanding about it, and second, how they all work together. Now, we don't have all of that understanding. But then, of course, when one comes to midlife, as I am, I'm 56 this year, after you turn 40, you become, really quite curious about spirituality and all of that. And then that's when I really started paying attention to some of the ancient wisdom, whether it was Ayurveda, whether it was any sort of philosophy that has actually kept people happy and well relatively for millennia, right? So then I started seeing the linkages. And I suppose the older I get and the more professional experience I have, the more I'm convinced that health is very complex. The sharp edge is definitely, medical services. I totally agree. I mean, billions of people are alive because we have vaccines and we understand infection prevention control. We have anesthesia, we have antibiotics. Of course, we need that. But what we're saying is it is essential, but it is not enough. And so my take is evolving. Tasha, it's not static. And I think this is also emblematic of the fact that humans learn throughout their lives. But I certainly have a different view of health than I did when I started being a doctor.
I really like the definition of the WHO and the emphasis of it's not merely the absence of illnesses. Where do you think with this concept of kind of integrative, where it's not just about, the illness attacking or treating the illness, and it's more about prevention and recovery and taking care of your mental health, social health, and physical health. Where do you think we are, as a society, or with regards to understanding that real concept about the definition of the WHO?
I think we're in a really exciting place because of advances in science, research, but also communication. So we're able to now hear others' perspectives, share others' research. So in this fourth industrial revolution where we are now, with the proliferation of biotechnology and information technology, we actually can have a very if you like, accelerated understanding of how they come together. I don't think anybody understands it completely, but there's so much information out there and the conversations out there are making everybody think. So I think we're really in an age of discovery and acceleration. I'm really actually quite thrilled about it.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think that's the tricky part. Like, while there's so much information, I think we are confused and overwhelmed by the content that we're receiving. That's where it's important for us to be, I guess, educated around which sources to turn to when we are confused and overwhelmed, especially with social media, right?
I think the issue is, our information that comes at us, and particularly sponsored information, is because they're based on products. Right?
Yeah.
So yes, of course it's confusing, but these are all tools at our disposal. What we need to understand is how each person is unique, right? Your wellness, your health is made up of so many different things. So we need to understand who we are and what we are and how all of this comes together. Then we have to have, this is really health literacy, right? What creates health or well-being? What prevents negative states from coming up? What prevents, protects, right? And then when these states come up, how do you treat it, right? A lot of the products are not addressing this complex interaction of things. So for example, let's take people with some cancers. Cancer is a terrible, not just a medical, it's a condition that can destroy families, create long-term suffering, right? Because of treatments, we can prolong suffering. Now, the pain related to cancers, nobody can manage this without completely doping people up. Researchers show people who are experiencing cancer and severe pain, when they meditate, certain types of meditation, actually have great impact on reducing the pain of cancer. So now these are two schools of thought, right? Now, who brings this together? Now, luckily, people are researching together, because Western medicine doesn't have an answer for that. Now, I'm in no way saying that we do not need Western medicine diagnostics, treatments. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if we bring these together, we can find, answers for complex questions. So it's really important that we have an open mind. But also, when that happens, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, where people could be investing a lot of time, money, effort in pursuing something that doesn't have an evidence base as well. So it is very, very difficult to figure this out.
What do you think are the resistance that are around it? So there's the lack of evidence. Do you think there are other things that prevent people from seeing their health in a more holistic perspective?
Yeah, because I think, health is seen as a product, not as a state, right? So people are selling health. So somebody will say, join the gym, you will be healthy. Health is a state, and it's not a static state. So I think that's one. I think the point about evidence is really important, because if you look at health, what has improved health most in the last 200 years? Without a doubt, it's Western medicine. It saved billions of lives. Now, Western medicine is really very scientific, because it is based on very serious, very strong evidence, and even the introduction of what we call randomized controlled trials. There's a high standard for evidence. So when you have health being protected by medicine, and that depends on evidence, and yet the other disciplines that could contribute don't have that same benchmark for evidence, of course we're not going to accept it. So culture is rightly focused toward evidence. Now, the issue is we need to take the next step to research. If you don't research it, you won't find it. In the last 20 years, if you take the invention of the functional MRI, that tool has allowed us to create evidence for meditation, because we can see how the brain is functionally changing when somebody is meditating or has meditated for a number of hours. Now, that's strong Western scientific evidence for this, right? Of course, the other thing is, in the ancient philosophies, there isn't such a commercial organization around it.
Right.
So the industry doesn't invest in that. But also, don't forget, many of the medicines that we use come from plants and herbs. So once they're discovered and the evidence show they work, they're taken into the Western system. Right, and used in different ways. But there are many countries who mix both Western, Ayurveda, traditional. And even if you take WHO, if I look at my own health insurance, when I joined, we only had health insurance for Western medicine. Now, more and more, you see it opening up for a number of Ayurveda consultations. They will reimburse me for certain acupuncture. So you can see slowly.
This is in Geneva.
No, it's across the UN family. So we have a joint insurance system, but even in a big system like that.
I mean, it's a big step forward. And I think if the WHO starts doing this, hopefully governments can start taking an example on it.
Really, the other issue is governments and authorities and WHO. We have responsibility when we say something is good, something works. First, we have to show that it's effective. We have to show it's safe. We have to show we've tried it in enough populations. Otherwise, that's also not fair. So I think really the key is to get this integrated research and create the evidence. When there's the evidence, nobody will have a problem saying it can work.
Yeah.
That's really it. And also to introduce the non-Western traditions to come forward and participate in this if they're serious about that. So everybody has a role. It's not that one sector is keeping everybody else out. The practice of healthcare and medicine, it's scientific, it's an art, but it's also a legal issue. Right? We have to feel confident in the professional licensing body. Something actually works first and does no harm.
Yes, for sure. For alternative medicine practitioners, how do you see this gap being bridged so that we can actually verify and validate the existence of these practitioners and that they are people that we can trust?
I mean, it's a tough question, but we can look at it in different ways. I think if you look at the market economy, it's pushed by demand, right? So if more and more people are demanding it, there is also that thing on that level. If you look
That's
at
true.
practitioners, I really believe they have to also adhere to the same standards that we do in Western medicine, whether it's research, whether it's standards of practice, whether it's code of practice, whether it's ethics. It's not just learning the science of medicine. I think you need to have that. Then, of course, third, you need government sponsorship. I think you need to have that. So it can thrive more. We have to respect that Western medicine has come so far because of science, but also because of standards and legal consequences, right? Of not sticking to those standards, whether it's use of products, whether it's behavior, whether it's how we sell things and advise things. So I think instead of fighting, we should say, look at that. How can we apply those standards to everything else? But most importantly, we need these different practitioners to talk to each other, start building confidence, start doing research together, and it's going to be not fast, but it'll be faster than in the previous couple of decades because of communication and social media and so on.
And you touched based on demand as well. And I think that some of the things are also going to kick off as people are, realizing that there's something that is greater, that is in their control. What do you think are some of the key things that people can start doing with regards to their health and not illness, so that they start exploring and understanding what they can do to be in control of their health?
We have a real problem in the world with health literacy. And I don't mean about balanced nutrition. It's really a bigger concept about what is health and how can I be in charge of my health. The first thing is mindset. To say health is big. Health can be a goal. We can say I have health today, but it's the guiding light. That's the first mindset. The second mindset is to be grateful for the health you have. You have a body. Your five senses work. That mindset of gratitude will make you want to look after your health. If you don't appreciate your health, you're not going to look after your health. So I think that mindset of gratitude is really important. That will lead to agency. The second is look at our mental and physical health because they're easily measured. So physical health, I'm not talking about medicine, but health. So what is the most important thing that really affects our health? It's the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. Then the really movement versus rest. Lots of people do movement. They're not sleeping enough. They're not resting enough, right? So then once you've got that, then you say, okay, there's a pandemic. That's a risk, right? How do I protect, prevent? And if I get sick, how do I take care of myself? And then how do I get well? It could be not that. It could be a cold. It could be an accident. But this concept of prevention, protection. So I think first is the mindset. And the second is just get your basics right. If you take about food, I mean, there was this famous food writer who gave the best nutrition advice ever. And it's only in 7 words, right? Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Health is not complicated if we simplify it like this. This is great advice, right?
Yeah.
So you have to sort that out. Then I think the third thing is really that spiritual, mental, social health. We need to be learning all the time, growing all the time. There's lots of evidence for spiritual practice, for meditation, how it doesn't just make you spiritually better, but it reduces blood pressure, it reduces inflammation, it reduces pain. I mean, it's linked to physical. If you're a skeptic, just look at the evidence. And then I think, last but not least, our social health. If you look at human needs, belonging, love, self-esteem, all of this come from social contact. And of course, it's the one thing that we've neglected in the last 15 months, right? Because of the pandemic, but it's not just because of the pandemic. So if you remember nothing today, remember eat food, not too much. Mostly.
I love that.
On that beautiful note and this message to our listeners.
Yes.
Thank you very, very, very much, Dr. Gaya, for this interview.
Yeah,
my pleasure. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and select that follow or subscribe button. For now, stay safe and we'll see you next week.